Okay.
I believe I have the document. What was the page number? 52.
Could we also identify by the section we're looking at, as some of us are working off of the red line version?
Well, it's for, under regulation 4906-4-07, if that helps. Water is a subsection. And if you proceed through water, you'll go to C2, which is construction. And then I'm going to direct him to C2C, which is entitled mitigation.
Mr. Stinson, we're also looking at the red line version, and that's page 54 on the red line version.
Page 54? Yeah, I have it wrong.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
I am on page 52.
Okay, very good. So, Mr. Carr, I wanted to ask you just a few questions about groundwater and bedrock. Looking at the paragraph under the heading of mitigation on page 52, do you see where it is stated in the last sentence that should groundwater be encountered during excavation, water removal shall be conducted in accordance with the following best management practices?
Yes, I read that.
So is it anticipated by Republic Wind that it may be necessary to de-water the excavations for the turbine foundations, or at least some of them?
I'm not aware of an answer to that one. I will defer to Witness McGee regarding some of the approaches here.
Has Republic Wind done any borings in the project area to explore the soils and or rock?
No.
Not even one?
No.
Are you aware of the existence of sinkholes in the project area?
I'm generally aware of the existence of sinkholes in the surrounding region.
Do you have approximately how many sinkholes are you aware of in the project area?
I don't have a figure for you.
How have you come to know or hear about those sinkholes?
Karst topography has certainly been a topic of some of the public comments received in this project. It's one of those features that we model in our desktop work, as referenced in the hydrogeological study. And so Witness McGee will actually speak to the work performed and any identified known karst features in this area prior to any future geotechnical work that will involve borings at some later stage. Now understand that borings are not required as of this stage of application review, and that is something that's certainly planned, but the project is where it needs to be at this point in time.
Have any of the participating landowners informed Republic Wind about sinkholes on their properties?
I don't recall offhand. It's my knowledge that there were public comments submitted, both in the local public hearing that we held in September, and certainly some that were posted to the docket separately with concerns regarding local karst features.
At this time, Your Honor, I would like to mark the next exhibit as LR Exhibit 12.
And what is this document?
It's a document entitled Exhibit F, Noise Impact Assessment.
It is so marked.
Thank you. Mr. Van Clay, a bit of housekeeping. Will we be referring any more to the clean copy of the application?
I don't know. I think not, but it's possible.
For the efficiency of my counsel, I'll hand back the laptop that I'm using and just get it back over here. Hopefully
Yeah,
it's
that would be fine.
Okay.
Mr. Carr, you've been handed what's been marked as LR Exhibit number 12. And you'll see that the first page of this document is labeled Exhibit F, Noise Impact Assessment. At the bottom of the page, you will see that there's a notation that says Republic Wind LLC, case number 19-1066-EL-BTX. You see that?
Yes, this appears to be a transmission line noise impact assessment for a separate application under review by the Power Setting Board.
Mm-hmm.
And for that reason, Your Honor, I'm going to object to further inquiry on this exhibit. It involves a different case. It's beyond the scope of Mr. Carr's direct testimony, and cross-examination is inappropriate.
Your Honor, this is the missing data that Mr. Old kind of obliquely referred to yesterday. We found it on the docket of the board last night in the public wind transmission case. It contains sound measurements in the project area, and it thus is directly applicable to this case, because this case deals in a large part with what the proper background sound levels of the project area are. And it doesn't matter whether it's been submitted as part of another case. If it's relevant to this case, then it should be admitted as part of this case, and I should be permitted to cross-examine about it.
Well, Your Honor, it's just highly, we're being examined on a different case, a different proceeding. And it's highly improper to do that in this case.
We're not examining about the other proceeding, we're examining about the sound measurements that were taken in the project area. And, I mean, the sound measurements were taken in this project area in the case that we're considering today. This is the data that should have been provided to us in discovery, which it was not. And now that we've discovered it, we found that it does include noise measurements that are in the project area, and which should be considered by the board as evidence as to what the actual background sound levels in the project area are. So I don't see how anybody can claim that it's not relevant to this case.
And I object also to Mr. Van Clay's characterization of this as missing information and discovering the information. As you well know from yesterday's hearing and arguments on this issue was a discovery issue. And Mr. Van Clay received the information that was contained within his discovery request. Now he's trying to go beyond that discovery request and introduce information from a different case. It's not appropriate, or it's not relevant.
When was this filed on the transmission line docket? Do you know?
Well, before yesterday.
All before yesterday?
And from the project area or study area for the noise impact assessment, is the project areas of both the case in which this particular noise impact assessment was conducted for, as well as the project area that is under consideration in this case, are they identical?
Mr. Van Clay, have you looked into,
Yes, I have.
and do you think it's identical?
The figure that is provided in Exhibit 12,
Which figure?
Exhibit 12, the document I just gave you, is somewhat differently configured. Probably it might have been a prior layout, but you can tell from the locations that are provided for the monitoring stations, as well as the portion of the project area that overlaps the current Republic Wind project area and the Republic Wind project area as it was configured back at the time when this document was filed, that those measurements for sound are in the current project area, because there's some descriptions of locations in the text that show you what roads the monitors were set up near. And if you compare that to the maps in the application, such as Figure 2 of Exhibit E of the amended application of December 26, 2018, in the present case, you can tell that those sound measurements were taken in what constitutes the present day project area. I would also add that Mr. Old yesterday testified that with respect to several of the sound monitoring locations that he used in this case that are outside of the present day project boundary, that those measurements are still relevant because he believes that they were close enough to the project area and that they are representative of the land use and soundscape of the current project area. So even if Republic Wind were to argue that the sound monitoring locations in our Exhibit 12 are somewhat or slightly outside of the current day project area, boundary, they would still be relevant to this case because Mr. Old says that they don't have to be within the project area boundaries in order to be relevant. So this, the sound measurements in this document are relevant to this case. I would also point out that this information fell directly within the request for documents that we made in this case, within two of them. One was document request number 15.
Do you have a copy of that request?
Yeah, I handed out to you just before,
Oh, yes.
as we were
Yes,
starting
you
the
did.
day.
So, where did you show me, point me to the page?
Starts on page 11.
Okay.
It's request number
Hold on.
15.
Hold on. Okay, you said 15.
Yes, request number 15. And that request reads as follows: all field notes, noise measurements, and other documentation and data relating to the noise study in the application, or any other study or measurement of background, construction, or operational noise in the project area. That's the first request that directly applies, and it's very specific, and it very specifically applied to this data that's included in LR Exhibit 12. The next request that applies is on the next page, page 12, and it's request number 16. And this request asks for all photographs, reports, correspondence, data, and other documents relating to any background sound level survey performed in the project area. That again is very specific, and it is, and like number 15, number 16, it is not limited to just the noise background study that was performed for purposes of this application. Number 15 specifically says we wanted noise measurements relating to the noise study in the application, as well as noise measurements included in any other study or measurement of background in the project area.
Mr. Van Clay, when did you make this request and when did you receive the responses from Republic?
We made the request in the first or second week of September of this year. And Republic's response is on the certificate of service, and is stated to be October 15, 2019. We had provided an extension to Republic Wind to respond to this document request, and then not receive, and we did not receive documents by the extended deadline, but then Republic Wind provided us with some documents prior to the hearing in response to this request, including documents that gave us on the Friday before this hearing started, as well as some periodic productions of documents prior to that time.
Your Honor, may I respond?
First, let me ask this question. The monitoring locations
Your
that,
Honor, I'm having a difficult time hearing you.
sorry, unfortunately, this is not working. The monitoring locations that were relevant to this case in 17-2295 compared to the monitoring locations that were utilized in case 19-1066. Do we know whether or not any of those monitoring locations were the same
I do know, they are not the same. There are 3 monitoring locations in Exhibit LR12, and they are all different than the monitoring locations provided in the application for this case, and they are all to the west of the westernmost monitoring station submitted as part of this application. In other words, they cover the area, the western area of the project area that Republic Wind did not submit any background sound data for in this application. So it fills a gap in the information concerning the sound levels throughout the project area that was left open by this application.
Your Honor, can I respond now to allegations of Mr. Van Clay with respect to Republic Wind not providing or not being responsive to the discovery request?
Yes.
If you look at the objections to these incredibly overbroad, undefined, very unspecific requests to Mr. Van Clay, we specifically indicate that it was objectionable and that we could not tell what exactly he was looking for, the whole universe of documents with respect to just the application or the project area or the time frame. So with that being said, we made our objection. Even after that, Mr. Van Clay failed to specify what exactly he was looking for. Throughout the process, he would indicate that he still wanted every single document under the sun, and then would say, but would you please provide us some additional documentation with respect to what your witness documents for your witnesses in preparation of their testimony or in preparation of the reports. We provided documentation with respect to what RSG prepared in this case, their work papers, all documentation supporting the noise studies that are at issue in this case. So to the extent that Mr. Van Clay was looking for noise studies in a completely separate application, one, he never indicated that, and then two, because of his incredibly broad request, it was unclear what he was looking for. So logically, we provided the information of our noise expert and all his underlying documents, documentation that was even not included in the application, to show here's what the studies we did for the Republic Wind Project 172295. All of Mr. Van Clay's requests throughout were ill-defined, undefined. It was impossible to tell what he was requesting. And even if he was specifically requesting this document, it would still be objectionable because the analysis and the studies that were performed in this relate to the specific transmission line. The transmission line, yes, does have a portion of it that is within the project area because logically that's how the project works. You have the overall wind farm, and then it also has a transmission line that interacts with the project area. But to the extent that the analysis that RSG went through and the monitors that they decided to use within this particular case is completely separate. So to the extent that Mr. Van Clay never asked for this document, which this case is public information, he knew of this case, just didn't ask for it.
Mr. Piram, has this document, the Exhibit F, been on the public docket in 191066? It looks like the application was filed August 27th. Was it part of that package?
Yes, this is part of the application.
When you say the application,
The exhibit LR 12 is part of the public application in case number 191066 ELBTX.
This was available on the docket August 27th, 2019?
Yeah.
Your Honor, could I respond to Mr. Perrin? I don't know how anybody with a straight face could state that a request for noise measurements in the project area is overbroad or ambiguous. And that is about as specific as a person can be.
It's also irrelevant because it's not related, if you're talking about
Could I
noise
just
from a
talk
separate project.
without
Okay.
interruption?
Hang on.
Hold on. Okay,
The bottom line is, this document is now in existence, you have possession of it.
Yes.
So really, what we're bickering about is really of no significance. We're at the point now where we're trying to determine, are we going to use this document?
Yes, I agree.
It doesn't matter any longer.
I agree.
That's a moot point.
I
So
agree.
let's just focus now on the issue of what do you want to do with the document, and we'll figure out whether or not that's appropriate. What do you want to do with the document?
I want to question Mr. Carr.
And just so that I can fully understand, is there at least an agreement that the area for which this noise assessment in LR 12 applied to is within the project area in this case?
Your Honor, it's my understanding there's overlap, yes.
Complete overlap, or is a portion of the noise study in LR 12 outside of the project area in this case?
I don't know off the top of my head. I can take a break to confirm that.
And Your Honor, if I could suggest, perhaps the question should be, are the monitoring stations inside of both project areas as opposed to the study? Because the study extrapolated from the information, the sound measurements in those three locations to the entire project area. So you could say that the study area for the ambient sound study in the transmission case is broader than where the measurements of sound were actually collected. But we're only interested in the measurements, in the measurements of the sound that were collected. We don't care about what they concluded concerning the right limit, for example, in the transmission case. We just want to get into the evidence what the sound measurements were at those three locations that are inside of this project area.
So there were 3 monitoring locations,
Yes,
and how many monitoring locations in total were there in this study?
3,
There were just 3.
yes.
Can you confirm that?
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening.
So Mr. Van Clay indicated that there's only 3 sound monitoring locations that were utilized for part of this noise assessment study. Is that
For the transmission line study,
yeah.
I can take a break to confirm that.
You can find the answer easily by looking at page 24 of Exhibit 12.
Your Honor,
Give me 1 second. Okay, so this is what we're gonna do at this juncture with this exhibit. Mr. Parham and Mr. Stinson, you're gonna find out if the sound monitoring locations in Exhibit F, in LR Exhibit 12, are within the project area for our case, for 172295. Does that make sense?
That does make sense, Your Honor, but to the extent that those monitors happen to be within the project area of 172295, I'm still not really understanding how an entire noise impact assessment for a separate project necessarily tied into this case.
I think what we need now is to know first whether those are in the project area or not. So is that something that you can confirm for us if we take a short break? Or we could finish up with other questions that you may have from Mr. Carr? and
I'd
go
rather
back to-
deal with it now.
Okay.
And then the other question that I'd like to know are the dates that pertain to both LR 12 as well as the dates for the noise study that was submitted and performed for the purposes of case 172295.
Yeah, the dates for the background study that are included in the case that we're hearing today, I believe, were February 2016. And the dates of the sound measurements that are in LR Exhibit 12, according to page 13 of that document, were performed from September 13 to 26, 2018
September 13th.
to 26, 2018.
And do you have the exact February date for the sound monitoring study in this case? I seem to have.
Yeah, I can find it.
Of course, Your Honor, we would like to confirm those dates because we aren't litigating the transmission line case in this proceeding with information with us.
You're not litigating the transmission line case?
They
In
are.
this proceeding.
No, we're not.
Okay. Well, actually, your name's all over it, Devin.
What case are we here for today, Mr. Rinklack?
Okay,
Okay.
gentlemen, that's not what we
Yeah.
want to know.
It's counterproductive. So we're gonna take a short break while you figure out the location of the 3 monitoring stations in case 191066. Okay, so let's go off the record.